the real game of the week in not just the Big Ten, in college football. Number one, Ohio State is coming to Washington. It's time for a crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into a Locked On College Crossover Edition. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the host of Locked On Huskies. That gentleman right there, that's Jay Stevens. He's the host of Locked On Buckeyes. But you know us because you're probably watching or listening, because it's your first watch or listen of the day on our respective channels. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And just a reminder, wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we post a new show on our respective channels or one of these wonderful crossovers like this one. And if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Now, Jay, we're really excited to get into this for all of our everydayers because, like I said, this is the real game of the week in the Big Ten this season. We don't care about whatever's going on in Happy Valley. We're not even going to acknowledge the names of those two teams because we are so excited about this matchup. We're going to play a little game at the very end of this of your team wins if. We'll get in that in a little bit. It's really easy, but we're going to get to some names to know for each Washington and Ohio State fan base from this upcoming matchup. But Jay, when you look at this game, the first thing you think is,
you got to contain Demond Williams, man. I know I'm going two X's and O's too early, but first thing I think about is exactly what is going to happen. These two offenses are going to be able to put up points against each other's teams. Julian Sayin leading one side, Demond Williams leading the other. This is the matchup, Roman, that I had circled on my calendar as soon as the schedule dropped, because I told you in the offseason, this Washington team can be scary. Going and playing in Husky Stadium can be really scary. It's Ohio State's first road game. CBS is going to be there, so it's a lot of buzz surrounding this game. It's the first Big Ten game of the year for both schools, so there's a lot riding on this game. It's going to be one game that I think we'll be talking about a few weeks after it's played because of what's going to happen on Saturday in Husky Stadium.
No, I couldn't agree more. When I just think about the general atmosphere of this, like, Washington has had its own roller coaster of even just the last 5 seasons. And I look at, being on the sideline and everything that was going on in the 2023 Oregon game. I think my ears are still ringing from that one, which was just truly one of the most fun games I've ever been a part of in any sport, and especially the outcome of that one. But I look at this matchup, and you're right. The number one thing on the field, in my opinion as well, is containing Demond Williams. And I do believe that Ohio State, when you look at this defense, they certainly have the athletes and the defensive scheme to make it possible. And one thing, since you want to dive into X's and O's, I'm all about that. It doesn't matter time or place. One of the things I'm most intrigued by with this is, for any everydayer out there who doesn't know, I am going to out myself here. I'm a gigantic Patriots fan. So I have spent a lot of time over the years watching a Matt Patricia defense, a Steve Belichick defense. And I think one of the things that I'm really intrigued about in this matchup is I believe Washington is somewhat uniquely suited to, I don't want to say take advantage of this defense because it is extremely talented with, Caleb Downs, everyone that you want to get into. But I also just think you practiced against this for a full year, just last season. So I think that this coaching staff already kind of knows what they want to do, how they want to game plan. But as Jed Fish told me on Monday, he understands that Matt Patricia does a great job disguising and throwing blitzes from different angles and all these other things. I think that this is going to be such a fun battle because of the high-end talent in this game. You mentioned Demond Williams. Obviously, Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston have helped make Washington one of the best, most explosive offenses in the nation. They're number 2 right now in points per game at 55.4. But you look at this Ohio State defense, and it's 5.7 points per game last I checked, right?
Yeah, it's pretty low. They have done a great job of not allowing anybody to score more than 9 points on the year. They had a shutout against Grambling. This defense, you think about Matt Patricia and what he's going to be able to do, I always go back to what happened game number 1 when Steve Sarkisian, after the game, talked about how he was even confused about what Matt Patricia was trying to do and how he couldn't figure out how to solve the puzzle that Patricia was throwing at Texas every single down. And for this game with Jed Fish being there in Washington, I want to see how often he uses a heavier set, maybe 12 personnel or maybe 13 personnel, because with Ohio State having the athletes to really try to contain Demond Williams, but also really defend Coleman and Boston, maybe a heavier set will cause Ohio State to do something they don't normally do, which is run a 4-3, which I think Ohio State's 4-3 would be pretty good. But if you're doing something new for the first time in a year, maybe that new thing might not be exactly what you want to do. Or maybe Ohio State goes 3-3-5, which I would be a big fan of. You still allow Caleb Downs to be the Swiss Army knife and the rover all over the field, but you bring in a guy in Peyton Pierce off the bench who could be a big guy, maybe in an outside backer spot. But even then, if you do that, maybe Jedd Fisch is tripped up early, but maybe Demond Williams is able to figure it out later in the game. And so it's going to be a chess match the entire time. I could talk all about the big three of Washington has because they're really good. But I have a lot of faith in Matt Patricia this weekend to get the job done.
So I really like where you're going with that. As you were saying that, two things popped into my mind. Number one, I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. A name to know that I wasn't planning on talking about, but because you just really did a great job explaining that and talking about 12 personnel and everything, a name that Ohio State fans should know in that regard is Quentin Moore. This is somebody who has been at Washington for feels like forever now. He's been here 4 or 5 seasons, and Jedd Fisch and this entire coaching staff has talked about him several times now as one of, if not the best blocking tight end in college football that they've ever been around. And he is just somebody who he was talking about a couple weeks ago. His mindset is just, I want to put somebody else in the dirt. Making a catch and doing all that sort of stuff is great and everything, but his favorite thing to do is just put the guy across from him in the dirt. And I feel like if you're doing that, we're going to see more 12 personnel because Washington has a freshman All-American tight end from 2024 in Decker DeGraff, who I've been really impressed with as just kind of that H-back move, just a move tight end who does a lot of different things, especially in the receiving game. If you go back and watch some 2024 film, Jedd Fisch's offense did a great job of scheming up touches for him throughout the season, which was a lot of fun to watch. And then the second thing, it's something that I talked about over on Lockdown Huskies. You talk about Caleb Downs as a Swiss Army knife. I've been really curious because you're going to need to put some kind of spy on Demond Williams. Who that is, I feel like that remains to be seen. I don't know if you want that to be Caleb Downs because he can just do so many different things for the defense. But one of the things where, I mean, the line, according to our good friends at FanDuel, is down to 8.5. In this game, where that is, a one possession game if you're going to take the Washington side of that. And when I think about if this is going to be a close game, because people are going to look at a number 1 team in the country versus an unranked opponent, this is going to come down to Demond Williams Jr. making a couple of off-script plays. And we have seen him do that at such a high level. He started 5 games, but I don't care because he has shown that he has the high-end ability of one of, if not the best quarterback in the country. And will we see that in this game? Maybe, maybe not. He completed 84% of his passes in his last game and did some of that in an incredible off-script format as well. But I think that's something that I'm going to be just keeping a really close eye on because he really is a game changer.
The fact that you've mentioned Caleb Downs being a potential spy is something that I thought about and even hinted at earlier in the week because you're going to have to spy Demond Williams with somebody. Who is that going to be? I think it won't just be one person. I would be shocked if Matt Patricia became so predictable that anytime there was a spy, there was one guy doing it every time. I think Ohio State has a plethora of guys that can spy. The difference is, while they have a plethora of guys that can spy, Demond Williams is quick, and Ryan DeCall says he's lightning in a bottle. But the difference is I don't think Ohio State has really showed off the pass rush like they want to show off in Big Ten play. And this might be the week they unleash the dogs on the edge to allow C.J. Hicks and Keanu Jackson Jr. to just get loose outside and allow them to keep Demond Williams in the middle, allow Caden McDonald to collapse the pocket, and to allow the potential running lanes that I saw were pretty wide open when they were playing Washington State to not be there because when Demond Williams gets it and need to make a quick move and starts to go, there's nowhere for him to go. And so I think there will be a mix of guys that are spying Demond Williams, but also I think the Buckeyes defensive line is up to the challenge to contain the talented quarterback.
I love where you're going with that. And that's going to certainly bring us into some names to know because I want to tell you about true freshman offensive lineman John Mills, but we'll do that on the other side of the break. We'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at Mazda, because Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be move. We also got a message from our good friends over at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. One of the best things about Monarch is you can identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation, and it can help you discover things like forgotten 401ks from past jobs, which I absolutely love. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. So Jay, you talk about this Buckeye pass rush, and I truly think that you guys have a lot of really talented defensive linemen. It's just one of the things you do so well. We don't need to get into the recruiting trail, because Kari Wilder, the 4-star out of California, is someone who I certainly thought would end up at Washington for a little while, and Larry Johnson and that coaching staff did a tremendous job grabbing him. But I want to talk about John Mills here for a minute. This is a guy who Washington flipped from Texas right before signing day last year, and I don't want to say he's run away with the left guard job, because redshirt freshman Paki Finau has certainly been really solid there as well. But this kid is still 17 years old, 6'6", 320 pounds, and through the first 3 games has been an absolute mauler in the run game and run blocking. And PFF has graded him out really well. And this is a guy who I don't want to say I have questions about in this game, but it's going to be a really big test for him, because I look at Washington's tackles of Carver Willis and Drew Party, and they're veteran guys who've been really solid through the first couple of weeks. And I think we're going to see some really fun matchups in just one-on-one and pass pro and different things like that. I look on the interior, and I think that Matt Patricia, just being the savvy veteran defensive coordinator that he is going to look at John Mills and say, that guy has played and started 3 college football games. I am going to test him early and see what he looks like.
You're very smart for saying that, because I think Matt Patricia is going to do that himself. On the Buckeye side of things, I've been talking a lot about the defense. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball. And there was a question during the press conference on Tuesday to Ryan Day in regards to some of the offensive linemen and how they're going to be able to handle the crowd and the noise they're going to have to be in the midst of on Saturday. And I think center Carson Hinzman, his experience is going to be very key in this game. Not only a year ago being moved back to center after Seth McLaughlin went down late in the regular season, but also before that, he was a full starter at center for the entire season. I believe either a year prior or 2 years prior. The timeline is kind of fuzzy, because he was starting, then not starting, then back to the starting lineup. But his experience starting, especially a year ago, is going to be very, very key for an offensive line that is going to be using different cadences than normal. Maybe using a silent count, maybe just going off signals from the sideline, because it's going to be so loud, where Hinzman, his experience and his expertise playing center is going to help Julian Sayin calm down and not freak out, because he can't trust the 5 guys in front of him. But also, Hinzman has to be the quarterback of the offensive line. And I have a lot of trust in this young man. I have a lot of trust in the Buckeyes offense to be able to move the ball, not just through the air, but on the ground, because Hinzman is leading the charge.
So one thing that was brought up at a UW press conference on Monday is Jeremiah Smith said at Big Ten Media Day that Autzen Stadium was the loudest he's ever played in. This isn't even me saying this from a UW Oregon rivalry standpoint. It does not compare. Washington is factually, when you look at decibel count, different things like that, much, much louder. So that's certainly going to be a unique experience. And, I look at Julian Sayin, and I'm curious to see how he's going to handle that in his first road start. As a former 5-star number 1 overall recruit, I feel like that's something he can do very well. But early on, if Washington's pass rush, which has 8 sacks so far this year, and I know there's some stats flying around that Washington right now is the number 1 team in the country at getting pressure without blitzing, Obviously, you're playing Colorado State, UC Davis, Washington State. Like, it's not necessarily the highest caliber of opponent, but I really like what this defensive line has done so far. And one guy that I've really been impressed with, Zach Durfee is a name I want to mention really quickly, who led the nation with 11 pressures last week against Wazoo, according to Pro Football Focus. But it's defensive tackle Ontario Thompson. This is somebody who transferred from Iowa to Western Michigan before arriving at UW. I think he's a tremendous athlete and has done a really, really good job so far in his final year of eligibility, coming in and just doing what he's supposed to do in this defense, which is create havoc as a great athlete, both against the pass and the run. And if guys like him and Bryce Butler are able to win their one-on-one matchups on the interior, because that's what this Ryan Walters defense likes to do, is create one-on-one matchups across the offensive line. I feel like if they can hit Julian Sayin a few times early in this crowd noise with that kind of pressure, I'm not going to, be disrespectful and say, oh, it's going to throw him off, anything like that. But I do feel like that's something that, again, in his first career start on the road, this is certainly not an easy place to do that.
No, not at all. Jeremiah Smith talking about Autzen Stadium being loud. I'm sure Penn State fans heard that and were like, wait, you literally played us a year ago, and now you're saying the Autzen Stadium was louder? And Caleb Downs even said when he was on this podcast talking to his brother and somebody else about some of the loudest stadiums he's played in, he mentioned Texas A&M, and they asked about Penn State, and they were like, Penn State was loud, but he's like, it only got loud in the pick six early in the game. Outside of that, Penn State really wasn't the craziest, which to me, up until I think a year ago, I would have said Penn State is the loudest. I still think it gets the nod, but I do think Autzen Stadium it's a close second. Really close second because of how wild those fans were. Washington's weird to me because, as you know, I do live in the Eastern time zone. We don't really get many games there. Like, I think Ohio State had been there. Last time they played, there was like 07 or 06. It's been a long time. And so I wasn't even a diehard Ohio State fan back then to know, like, I'm watching every game. I know that stadium. I know those players. I wasn't like that. And so I don't watch the Apple Cup every year. If Oregon goes to Washington, I don't care, Roman. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I truly don't care.
Whoa.
It's so like, I know Husky Stadium is loud based off what I've heard, but for Jeremiah Smith, since you brought him up, he is, I think, hungry to get back on the field, not just because of the bye week, but people have been talking, and I know people are trying to, like, hype him up, but also he's been hearing a lot of Denzel Boston's name all week. This guy is so good. This guy is really, like, I've been hyping up Denzel Boston on purpose because
Denzel's
he's
awesome.
A really good receiver. But Jeremiah Smith's going to go out there and try to remind everybody, as good as Denzel Boston is, Jeremiah Smith is better. So it wouldn't shock me if Jeremiah Smith had 3 touchdowns in this game, not just because he can, but because he is trying to send a message that he doesn't care who is on the other side, who the other team's best receiver is, that Jeremiah Smith is still that dude.
So I'm very intrigued by this because this is something that I know you and I have talked about on our wonderful Big Ten squad show that we like to do. There is no individual matchup that I have looked forward to more this entire season than Jeremiah Smith versus Takario Davis. Because if you were to build a cornerback in a laboratory to stop Jeremiah Smith, it would look just like Takario Davis. He is 6'4", 200 pounds, really long arms. Now, he's questionable for this game. From everything I've heard from my sources, people I've talked to, I believe he is going to play in this game because this is one of the reasons he came to Washington after 3 years at Arizona. He had a down year last year. He wasn't happy with his performance and wanted to come back and show what kind of corner he really is. And it's for a game like this, for a matchup like this. He is so good in press coverage. He's been so impressive so far this season. And I think that is like, I promise you, when I'm sitting up in the press box on Saturday, I am going to miss the outcome of at least one play because I am just going to be so laser focused on what those two guys are going to do in one-on-one coverage. I'm so excited to watch that. And I think that that's something where, when we look at just how this game might play out, again, assuming Takario Davis is healthy and can play in this game, that could decide it.
Oh, yes, it definitely could. I think for Ohio State and even Washington, maybe, the trenches are always going to be the one thing you're going to look at. But I've been trying to figure out how good Washington's rush defense is. Maybe you know the answer to that because I don't, even though I've tried to watch some games and rewatch certain things. you play 3 really bad teams, not you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I almost called you Spencer. Sorry. That's not
that would have hurt. That would have hurt more than the Apple Cup thing.
I don't know how good Washington's rush defense is. I don't. I know what the numbers tell me. I know what my eyeballs tell me when they're playing certain teams. But when you get up early or if it's a shootout, you're not running the ball. You're trying to throw the ball to keep up. And so maybe Washington's rush defense is good, and Ohio State's rushing attack will be slowed down. But I do think Ohio State has a true freshman of their own in Bo Jackson, who is preparing to get a lot of touches on Saturday. He came into the year as a third running back. In the first couple of games that he's played this year, he didn't play against Texas. He has showed that he can handle a whole lot more than the average true freshman, and he is, to me, the best running back Ohio State currently has. If Ohio State gets things going on the ground and starts being able to control the line of scrimmage and set the tone physically up front, one, we'll get a good handle on how good Washington's rush defense is, but two, we'll get a good glimpse about how good Ohio State's rush offense can be. And so, Jeremiah, I think this is great. I am looking forward to seeing Bo Jackson, the true freshman running back, tote the rock this weekend.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because the number one thing for your team wins if it's Washington needs to win the battle on the front seven. So I'll tell you all about UW's run defense on the other side of the break. Because we've got a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, player props, build on a same-game parlay, which is my personal favorite, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Jay, you posed a great question here with Washington's run defense, because you're right. It's not the toughest non-conference schedule in the world. And you go and you look at that first quarter against Colorado State. I've had a lot of my everydayers over on Locked On Huskies with a lot of major questions saying like, hey, you let up 71 rushing yards in the first quarter to Colorado State. How did that happen? Why is that possible? Obviously 27 against Wazoo. I think it's 43 against UC Davis. So not necessarily the toughest opponents in the world, but here's my two things. First of all, that first quarter against Colorado State, I've been able to speak to Brian Walters about it in press conference settings and multiple members of this defense who said, yeah, this Colorado State team, they threw a lot at us that they didn't show on film last year, that we were not prepared for, that we did not game plan for. And that was one of the reasons they were able to rip off so many chunk runs. So the best answer I can give you is we don't know yet. But with that being said, one of the things that I like about this UW defense, and if they are able to win this battle in the trenches, which is a very tall task, is Washington. I don't think there's one true superstar right now along the interior of Washington's defensive line. I think there are a lot of very, very good players. The best player is still sidelined coming off a torn Achilles in Javon Parker that he suffered at Rutgers last year. And I don't think he's going to be in line to play in this game. But the thing is, there are 6, 7, 8 guys that UW is going to be able to throw out there in a very healthy rotation to keep these guys fresh. And I think that if they are able to do that and hold the point of attack and just I always I have a buzzer that I want to start hitting when I go with these coach speak lines, but if they are just able to do their job and win at the point of attack and have one guy that I want to mention is safety Alex McLaughlin. I was going to get to him in names to know, but it's a perfect way to talk about this. Is he's the team leader or tied for the team lead in tackles with 16, him and starting linebacker Devin Bryant. If those two guys can do what they've done a good job of so far through these first couple of games and come down and fill rushing lanes and make tackles, which is what this Ryan Walters defense is designed to do. Just, the defensive line eats up gaps and lets linebackers and safeties who are playing in the box shoot through and make plays in space. If they are able to do that, I like UW's chances. And like you said, I completely agree with you. I think Bo Jackson is the best running back on this team, because I look at CJ Donaldson, I look at James Peoples, and I think that they're solid backs as well. But the explosive element that he brings, especially if he's going to try to get outside the tackles, I'm really curious to see how that matchup is going to play out.
Roman, when it comes to Ohio State winning this game, I mentioned Devon Williams earlier, like in the first couple of minutes of me speaking, so I'm not going to mention him again. I don't
You
even
can. I love talking about Demond Williams. That's fine with me.
What's that?
You can. That's fine with me. I love talking about Demond.
No, to me though, in games like this, and I know some people may say it's not like a matchup game as Ohio State calls it, but I truly think it is. I think Washington has the talent on both sides of the ball to make it a matchup game. You got to wrap up Jonah Coleman. Because the one thing I don't like when Ohio State is playing certain teams is when they just decide to like go away from their fundamentals of not just Ohio State football, but football 101. You're not supposed to tackle somebody without wrapping them up. If you're third grade Little League football, they teach you wrap up, put your helmet on that ball. And now the techniques are different and you will roll at certain things, but you still got to wrap an old boy up. And I don't know how much he weighs or how tall he is, but he's a load to bring down, man. He's a tough running back. And so if Ohio State can contain him, now it's not just going to be the defensive line, the 4 guys up front, or maybe a 3 down front that Ohio State's utilizing. It's everybody, all 11 guys on the field. If it is truly a run call that's going to Jonah Coleman, you got to wrap him up because making sure you follow the fundamentals when tackling him is going to help you follow the fundamentals with Demond Williams and whatever Washington throws at Ohio State's defense.
No, I love where you're going with that. And for the record, 5'9", 220 is what he's listed at right now, I believe. And I after like watching him at Arizona for a couple of years, the first time I got to like meet him in person and speak with him up close, I was like, oh, that's why. In terms of, that's why nobody can tackle him, because he is a just absolute freight train of a human being. So I like where you're going with that. And especially you mentioned making this a matchup game. The thing that I am most curious with, and I want to go back to Washington's offense here, where like you said, we have talked a lot about Demond Williams, which rightfully so. One thing that I'm really curious with, because one of Washington's starting wide receivers went down with a collarbone injury a few weeks ago in sophomore Rashid Williams. And coming into the season, everyone was fully expecting him to break out as the number 2 wide receiver. In his place, Washington will be starting 2 true freshmen. One of them, Raiden Vinesbright, has been starting since game 1. Really talented player. I love the deep element that he brings. The other one is true freshman wide receiver Desmond Roebuck, who I have been really impressed with. This is a guy who is he enrolled in June and has done nothing but come in and make plays on a day in, day out basis. He's got a great feel for the game. He just knows how to sit down in soft spots and zones. He's great at moving with Demond Williams and just finding ways to get free, and is a great playmaker with the ball in his hands. But when I look at this game, I think that those guys might have an impact. The one dude who I really think needs to step up and have a big impact in this game is Penn State transfer Omari Evans. This is someone who didn't play in Washington's first 2 games because he was sidelined with what was deemed a soft tissue injury. He comes back, gets 1 touch against Washington State, and it's a 59-yard touchdown. This is a dude who has field stretching speed and was brought in to play that Z role before Rashid Williams, a former 4-star recruit in his own right, beat him out because he's also a really talented player, but both of them were still expected to be heavily utilized in this rotation. And I look at a guy like that, and it's about finding a way to, again, win these one-on-one matchups, because I fully expect Matt Patricia to throw some different brackets and just double coverages at Denzel Boston, because why would you not? And that forces all of these other relatively untested guys, especially when you look at target share and receptions this season, to win against a very talented Ohio State defense. And I think that's one of the things that if Washington were to win this game, that's where it's going to be decided. Yeah, UW wants to run the ball. Yeah, they've done a great job of that this year, but it's about finding that second option in a game like this against a defense like this.
Roman, there's one thing that I haven't really touched on yet. I really have not talked about Julian Sayin as much as I planned on doing it, because he has started off hot. I mean, if there's a quarterback that is, I will say this, Demond Williams has been accurate, almost as accurate as Sayin. He just hasn't made the mistakes that Sayin has made. And so Sayin, with as good as he has played, and knowing he has thrown 3 interceptions, but he's bounced back from those, I think that he will hit some adversity with the crowd this weekend. I am not going to shy away from the fact that this crowd is going to be loud. The stadium is built for a crowd that's going to be loud. I don't know if it's normal for stadiums up there to have the awning or the covering over the fans like it does, but I love the design, and it does trap the noise in. And that's going to cause Sayin to have some trouble. I know he's from the West Coast, but most football stadiums aren't constructed like this. And so when he hits adversity, how does he bounce back? But also, Washington's pass defense isn't that good. And so I think Sayin can take advantage of this, and maybe I'm off on this, Roman, but from what I have seen, this pass defense is something that Julian Sayin can take advantage of. If Washington plays man-to-man defense, it might turn into a track meet where Ohio State's way ahead and Washington's trying to play catch-up the entire time. If they mix up the zone and man schemes, I think it's going to be Ohio State scoring a little bit less. But if there's man-to-man, Ohio State does have Jeremiah Smith. They do have Carnell Tate.
Yeah.
I think Brandon Ennis is one guy to watch for Ohio State. Did mention him in the last segment. That's my apology for Ohio State fans. Like, what about Brandon Ennis? He hasn't really been a big piece of the pie for the Buckeyes offense so far. I think that changes this weekend because Sayin is going to try to get that slot receiver open early and often.
So I do have a question for you. When you talk about Ohio, or Washington's pass defense, or how much of that are you basing off the WSU game?
A lot of it.
Okay, so this is where I'm curious because Washington's defense pass defense is a lot better than it showed in that game because Takario Davis didn't play. So there were a lot of different things schematically that they did. They were sitting in a lot softer zones and trying to keep everything in front, where with Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock on the outside in a pair of 6'4" corners who love to play press man, who love to jam at the line. I think that matchup, I'm glad you brought up Brandon Ennis, and I want to get there in 1 sec before we get out of here. I love that you brought that up because I think that this is a matchup of 4 NFL guys that we're going to see on the outside between Ohio State's top 2 receivers and UW's top 2 corners. And again, this is all assuming that Takario Davis plays in this game, which I fully believe he will. When you talk about Brandon Ennis, I think that Rashawn Clark is one guy who I also wanted to get to a little bit earlier, Washington's starting nickel corner, who is so impressive, man. He was the MVP of spring ball for this team. He's a really shifty athlete in space. And I think he's someone who, if you were to ask the coaching staff, who are like the brightest rising stars on this team that aren't, DeMond Williams, I think that he would be one of the very first guys that they mention. So I think that that's going to be a really exciting matchup to watch. Honestly, what I thought you were going to say with that is a name that I don't think we've said this guy's name yet. Max Clare. I thought that you were going to mention Max Clare because that's the matchup I'm most intrigued by with UW's pass defense versus this Ohio State passing offense, because I think that Washington has some really talented safeties. Alex McLaughlin, I mentioned earlier, is the one I wanted to highlight here one more time. I think that that's going to be the matchup to watch because when UW's pass defense has struggled this year, like it did on a couple of possessions against Colorado State, like it did at different points during this Wazoo game as well, Alex McLaughlin was the guy that they turned to cover tight ends. And I've been, again, so wildly impressed by him just as a coverage guy coming over from FCS Northern Arizona. He's put on 15 pounds and has proven to be one of the better playmaking safeties on this team. And I think that as we move forward, like with UW's pass defense this year, by the end of the year, he's going to be a guy that draft analysts are really going to like. And I think he might be up for Big Ten honors. I'm being completely serious with that.
Yeah, Max Clare is one that I think I've been so focused on getting Ennis back into the fold and getting him some more touches and really highlighting how he's still going to have an impact this season that I guess subconsciously just glossed over Max Clare's impact with the offense. I think Will Kazmarek, the backup tight end, is going to be very pivotal in this. He caught a touchdown last week against his former team, the Ohio Bobcats. And I think Kazmarek is not just going to be a guy that's going to be a big run blocking tight end. I firmly believe that with Max Clare, the Buckeyes tight ends could each find themselves having 3 to 5 catches apiece. Now, more so 3 to 5 for Clare, not Kazmarek. But if Kazmarek has a couple of catches or even 3 catches, I don't know if there's anything Washington's defense can do to slow down the passing attack that Ohio State has.
Jay, this has been tremendous. You and I might differ a little bit on what that pass defense might look like at the end of the day, but that's okay because before the game, during the game, after, we're going to have so much coverage of it on our respective channels. You've been Jay Stevens from Locked On Buckeyes. I'm Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies. If you like what we're bringing to the table, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. Make sure, because we're there, we're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell, so as we post new show. Get any questions, comments, concerns, drop right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.